All right, buckle up, buttercup. We have a lot to get through today. Today we are going to talk about the 3 buckets of responsibility and how you can make these easier for you. If you're a woman in functional burnout, if you're a woman who's feeling really overwhelmed because right now lifing is lifing at you a little bit too fast and hard, this is the episode for you. Welcome to the Feminine Duality, a podcast for midlife women where we heal from burnout and we learn how to take charge of our crazy time again. We have spent a lot of episodes busting a lot of myths. We've busted the myth of procrastination. We have busted the myth of constant level equal capacity. We have busted the myth of not everything is your responsibility in the first place. And today I'm not going to bust any more myths. Well, I probably am. It'll just happen. But no, today I want to talk about how to really look at everything you have on your plate. Your to-do list, your to-do list, your get-to list, all these demands that you have on you in your life, all these balls that you're juggling and the plates that you're spinning, and talk through how you can think about them, organize them, or drop them to give yourself a little bit of space in life. These 3 buckets of responsibility, they are your true non-negotiables. So the things that absolutely have to happen, because if they don't happen, there is a risk to health or safety. I'm talking about your structural obligations, the things that, still kind of have to happen because this is just the society we live in. We are expected to turn up at work. We are expected to keep our homes, vaguely hygienic and our kids in school and, structural obligations. And the 3rd bucket is absorbed responsibilities. All these things that maybe aren't necessarily your responsibility, but you saw it and you're capable of dealing with it. So you dealt with it and, oh, great, now it's yours. Forevermore. The example of that I gave in a previous episode is my ex has always been the stay-at-home parent even when we worked together. And I would go into work and I would have an adult social life because I got to speak to other grown-ups at work and talk about things other than to do with the kids. And he was, quite justifiably a little bit upset about this because he felt it was unfair, and it was unfair. But I didn't just see that this is unfair. I saw that he needed a social life and I took it upon myself to organize it. And my absorbed responsibility was that I was suddenly organising play dates for a grown-up man. Perfect example of an absorbed responsibility, but I'm going to give you a lot more. This is a long episode. I hope you will stay with me. I'm doing all the absorbed responsibilities at the end because I think that is the biggest and the most important chapter of this episode. I have a lot of examples that I think will make you sit up and go, oh crap, yeah. Oh, I'm in this episode and I'm not happy about it. We shall see. Come along for the ride. All right, let's talk about your to-do list, which is highly likely to be quite a big list, isn't it? And feels rather overwhelming and has a lot of items on there that tends to be written on the to-do list and then moved into tomorrow and then into the next day because you just don't get to it that day or you don't have enough energy for it that day. How do you think about your to-do list? And how does doing the things on your to-do list end up making you feel? Are the majority of items in your to-do list things that are energy draining? Or do you have things on there that are energy giving or just plain neutral? They don't do either. You just get on and do them, but you don't get a dopamine boost and you don't feel mentally exhausted from doing them either. The other day, it was the 1st of May. The 1st of the month. Always an exciting day, isn't it? I was working only for myself that day and I was like, oh, that's great. I'm going to sit down and plan out this particular podcast episode and maybe record it. And then I opened up my bullet journal and I started writing down things on my to-do list. And before I knew it, I had a very long list of life admin tasks on there. And nowhere on there did it say script podcast episode. What I had done was I had crammed all of my structural obligations for the month in that one day. All the bills that don't go out by direct debit. Budgeting for the month. Make this appointment. Follow up on that email. Oh, look for this thing, right? It was just crammed full of month shift life admin tasks. And personally for me, those are things that I tend to find energy draining. I don't like them. I mean, particularly the budgeting aspect. Oh, really not a fan, right? And yes, they are things that need doing. And they are things that need doing around the 1st of the month, but they don't all have to happen on the same day. And they don't go into one day's to-do list. Basically, I messed up my own planning system because I know this. I know this about me, about how I function and how I work best and how to plan for my capacity on any given day. I mean, after all, this is a planning system that I have invented and perfected over many years. So I had to take a little bit of a step back from my own to-do list and go, all right, love, what are we doing here? I remembered my own lessons and I asked myself these questions. What are my energy levels like today? What am I carrying with me that feels heavy? What has happened recently that may impact how I'm feeling? I'd been to a funeral the day before. I was still carrying that with me and that felt heavy. What are the things where I need to see some progress? What genuinely has to happen today? What would I like to do today? What do I need for myself? And having asked myself all of those questions, I moved the items on the to-do list I'd written into other days. Over several different days, all but one. I kept one. Let's get that out of the way, at least. And then move one to the next day and two to a couple of days later, right? Then I thought about get-to items. What do I get to do today? What do I need? Not what needs to happen, but what do I need today? So I wrote down some get-to items. And I left space for the ta-da items. The things that you just get on with and do even though you hadn't written them down anywhere, and then you get to write them down and tick them off and you get the dopamine boost that way. The energy for the entire day shifted. Everything opened up. On my get-to list, I wrote sit in the sun and write. Because one of the things that I felt was rather important was to script this podcast episode. But I was working for myself. I was working from home. And actually, working from home does not mean that I have to stay glued to my flat. It just means I get to choose where I work from. So I went to a coffee shop with a beautiful outdoor seating area and I plonked myself down there to work. While I was there, I opened up my phone and I replied to several business-related emails. They just flowed from me. And quite frankly, that is a task that could very easily be an energy-draining task. If it's done on the wrong day or if it's forced when I don't feel like I have enough energy, it's an energy-draining task. But actually, sitting in the sunshine with a flat white, it became a neutral task, even an energy-giving task, because, I mean, that was definitely ta-da items, right? I hadn't planned to do it. Even in my first crazy, do all the important, really heavy things today, even there I hadn't written down to deal with those business emails. But I ended up doing them and I got to write them down, tick them off and go, ta-da! And the scripting of this episode, it just flowed. Because once I opened up space in my day, things started happening and they happened fast. When I have space in my life, I'm very decisive and I'm very productive. It just, okay, and this thing, and this thing, and this thing. In that space, I gained some clarity about what will be the next steps for me to do in the feminine duality. And yes, those business-related emails were one of those things. That's why that happened. Other things I wrote down in my monthly vision board as things I would like to see happening this month. So I can refer back to them on a day when I have space and clarity again to deal with them. This simple exercise of stopping and asking myself about my energy levels and about my needs, it moved me from a state of everything is important and everything has to happen now to being able to see that actually not everything was equally important and not everything was equally urgent. And it could be spread out over several days and I could have that space. By not forcing myself through a whole bunch of energy draining tasks, I had more energy to get on with the things that I wanted and needed to do. I think too much gets lumped into the category of true non-negotiables, particularly if they are tasks that we find energy draining. Because a task that is energy draining is a task that makes you feel a bit uncomfortable, a bit stressed out, a bit anxious. And so you have a heightened emotion attached to that task already. And when you have that emotion attached to it, it feels urgent. And if it's urgent, that must mean it's important. And if it's important, it must mean that it's non-negotiable. Actually, it isn't. The list of things that are truly non-negotiable responsibilities in our lives is very, very short. Because a true non-negotiable is something that if it doesn't happen, it will have immediate and meaningful consequences to health, safety, or basic functioning. Okay? Not guilt, not judgment, not discomfort, not inconvenience, actual consequence. Your true non-negotiables refer to your physical survival, your health, and dependent care. You need to eat something. Doesn't have to be organic, home-cooked, perfect, gorgeous meal every day, but you do kind of need to eat. And you need to drink something. Ideally a few glasses of water, but you need to drink something. I personally like my water filtered through caffeine, but I drink a lot of water, but I do love my coffee. Love my coffee. You need some rest, some sleep, ideally. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you need 8 hours a night, because as a medical mama, I think that is complete and utter bollocks. But, we need to rest. We need to take essential medication. If you have a condition for which you're medicating, you do need to take your medicines. If, like me, you are looking after somebody who's very survival, depends on you looking after her, well, you need to do that. I have to remember my daughter's medicines. I have to make special food for her. Feeding children, providing medical care, supervision where required, keeping our children safe. Those are true non-negotiables. That's it. Most of these probably don't go on your to-do list. Unless you're crazy like me and you write down eat something on your to-do list, because there are some days I need to do that because my brain is over there and my body is right here, and my brain is not interested in checking in with my body because it is so up in whatever abstract thinking I'm doing that day that I actually have to have an item on my to-do list that says eat something. Not every day, but some days I need to do that. I don't write in my to-do list daughter's medicines, because every day that she's with me, her medicines happen. When I had really bad brain fog from my perimenopause before I started HRT and started to gain back some executive function, yeah, I had to write it down. I actually had to write down to remember to give her medicines and have a cheat sheet of the doses and the times. Now I don't do it. Now my brain is with me enough for me to be able to do it. But as I say, they are probably not very likely to go on your to-do list, at least not every day. A lot of structural obligations feel like non-negotiables. I mentioned that before, that they feel urgent, they feel important. And you might argue with me and say that if I don't pay my mortgage on time, there will be real consequences. Yes, absolutely. There will be legal and safety consequences if you don't pay your mortgage. They will take your house eventually. Same with showing up for work. If you treat work shifts as optional, you will lose your job, okay? And that will have a very real impact on your financial status, okay? I get it. They're still not true non-negotiables. Because if you're a few days late with your council tax, nothing's going to happen. And you're actually going to have to go several months of unpaid council tax before you start receiving letters asking you what is going on, followed by court summons. And at that point, yeah, you're going to have to do something about it. Because if you don't do something about it, that's when your real true consequences show up. But they are structural obligations you are expected to carry out. With work, if you do no-shows for work, they'll contact you and try and find out what's going on. And if they get hold of you and you have a conversation, well, nothing really bad's going to happen. But if you keep ignoring, well, then a procedure is started. But ultimately, you'll get a grace period. You might get a late fee, you might get a warning, but that does not make it a true non-negotiable. However, if you are an insulin-dependent diabetic, failing to keep an eye on your blood sugar and not taking your insulin as needed has direct, real health consequences. That is a true non-negotiable. True non-negotiables, they look different for different people. Not everybody's a diabetic, not everybody has a medically complex child, right? The distinction here is that everything important does not equal everything is non-negotiable. Important, non-negotiable, not the same thing. Keeping the household running, being there for everybody, staying on top of everything. Yeah, important, probably feel very, very solid, very real, maybe even feel non-negotiable in your life. But the truth is you have far fewer true non-negotiables than you actually think. Because those items I just mentioned, they are either structural obligations or absorbed responsibilities. Doesn't mean they're not important. Doesn't mean you still don't have to do them, but just to get the distinction right. So let's start with the non-negotiables. What makes the non-negotiables easier to manage when life is overwhelming and you are really struggling to stay on top of crap? I mean, you heard me. To-do list. Eat something. It's about creating structure and routine around it. And you will get structure and routine around it. A new medical condition, yeah, it's gonna take a while to get used to it. When my daughter gets a new medicine or her doses changes, it takes a little bit of time to get used to it. I write it down so I don't forget. She's on so many medicines And they're all of different doses. And the frequency is once a day to 4 times a day, depending on which medicine it is. So one of my routines around it is that every evening I take 2 plates and I take the box of syringes, and then I pull up this evening's medicines and tomorrow morning's medicines. Because for most of the medicines I pull up in the evening, I'm also going to have to give her again in the morning. So that's my little routine around it. Tomorrow morning's is done tonight. And that's the extent of routine I do around it. I could probably draw up her midday ones as well, but of course she has 2 medicines. She gets 4 times a day, and then a number of medicines that she gets 3 times a day, and then I end up with, it starts getting really complicated. But I have seen very beautiful labelled boxes. Like, not boxes, but pots. People have beautiful labelled pots, and they draw up all the syringes for the day. And it's like, this is the morning given at blah time, this is the next lot, this is the next lot, this is the next lot. If you're on medicines for yourself, if you're on pills, a pill caddy is a brilliant thing, and it's most definitely not just for old people. It is an absolute must-have for the scatterbrained woman. If you are on a lot of different pills at a lot of different times a day, a pill caddy is your best friend. Or having phone reminders, a bingly boop saying check your blood sugar. Whatever it is that works for you and for your circumstance. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's got to work around you. Structural obligations, because this is the world we live in. Yes, we have bills to pay. Yes, we have work to do. I think I will put keeping the house relatively functional. I think I would put under a structural obligation. I mean, you could argue it's an absorbed responsibility, I suppose, but a certain level of cleanliness and tidiness. I'm not talking about perfect, I'm talking about functional, livable, all right? This falls under structural obligations. And yeah, you can't get away from the fact that if you have a job, you kind of have to show up and do the job you're hired to do. How do you make that particular structural obligation easier to deal with? You think about how you think about it. Meta sentence. I love my content creation. I get so full of joy doing my Parent XP vlogs. It's fascinating to me working on the feminine duality and pulling out of my head in a structural order all of these things that I have learned over the years, all the things that I have developed over the years. I absolutely love and adore doing my work. I do not love and adore the day job. Okay, there is nothing glamorous whatsoever about putting raw chickens on a shelf in Aldi at 6 o'clock in the morning. I can't dress it up. I really can't. But if I spend my days walking to a litany of, I hate my job, I hate my job, I hate my job, I hate my... I'm going to exhaust myself, because that shit is exhausting. So I'd much rather spend my days looking for the little nuggets of joy, like my customers. I have some really fascinating conversations with my customers, and actually quite a lot of those conversations end up as content in one way or another. It's an endless source of content ideas. It's fantastic. I get a chance to look at people at the most basic human level, and it's interesting. So that's what I focus on. That's the important part. And quite frankly, at 6 o'clock in the morning, when we don't have any customers in the store and I am just putting raw chicken up on a shelf, I have podcasts on. That is my personal professional development time. That's when I listen to my online marketing podcasts, my female solopreneur podcasts, or even my spiritual development podcasts, like the human design stuff and the nervous system regulation stuff, like all of that. I do that early in the morning. Now, maybe you can't, because you have a job where you actually have customers around or other people around, and you don't get a couple of hours of podcast listening, but you probably do get that time on your way to work. Compartmentalizing that work is this container, but it pays the rent and it pays the bills and it pays the food. And then within that container, we have these little nuggets of joy, these little things that make the day brighter. Colleagues we actually like spending time with. Conversations that spark an idea. Focus on that instead of the And the whole thing of working from home or working for self. I mean, when you do that, as I said earlier, there is absolutely nothing saying that you are only allowed to do that work from one spot. There is also going to be flexibility around when you do it. I did work from home a lot in my corporate career because, 2-hour commute and young children at home. So I had days when I worked from home and I had days when I travelled into London to work from the office. But I don't know, maybe I had a very weird employer. But I was the early bird. Even when I went into the office, I was in before everybody else because I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I do my absolutely best work at 7 a.m. So I would come in early and I would leave early, or when working from home, I would start working at 4 in the morning and I would finish working around 2 in the afternoon and then have the rest of the day. Because around 2 p.m. my brain starts trickling out of my ears and I am no longer good for anything, right? Morning is my time. But But for a lot of people, they work better in the afternoons and evenings. And so they adjusted their working times for that. And I think a lot of corporate employers are like that now. As long as you get the job done, it doesn't really matter when you get it done. And it doesn't really matter where you get it done from, as long as it gets done. And whilst not everything in the job description is necessarily enjoyable, it's again looking at the things that are enjoyable or looking at the bigger picture. I think particularly all of us who are running our own businesses, not every task in running our own businesses is fun. I mean, setting up my email marketing system was an absolute ball ache. Oh, hated it. But do I believe in the importance of having an email list? Yes. Do I believe that I connect better to my email subscribers than anybody else? Absolutely. Yes. Can I give my email subscribers information in a deeper and different format than I can on the podcast? Again, yes, absolutely. Do I love writing my emails? Yes, I do. I did not like setting up the email marketing provider and connecting it to my domain name. That part, not enjoyable. The end result, very much. And of course, this leads me into saying that if you want to join my email list, there will be a link in the description where you can join it. I don't send an awful lot of emails, possibly yet, because I am a very busy person. It's not even a weekly email. It's probably more like once a fortnight to once a month that I send something out. But that means that when you do get an email from me, it's because I actually have something that I genuinely want to tell you. Other structural obligations, like school run. If you have young children, you're still probably involved in school run. And even if you have older children, you are probably still involved in chivying them out the door on time, right? But does it really have to be a perfect morning routine with a healthy breakfast and a complex hairdo and an immaculate school uniform? Or is it quite frankly enough that we're all out of the door on time, vaguely on speaking terms, with something to eat in the car on the way down to school? I actually think that's enough. Yes, I love a morning where the routine runs smoothly, but I certainly do not expect it. And yes, particularly on a weekend when we're not going anywhere, poached eggs and salmon and spinach, we love that kind of breakfast. On a school morning when everything's happening all at once and I'm running behind and my nerves are running rather afraid, I make a smoothie to have in the car together with the breakfast bar. It's still calories, it's still blood sugar, as long as we're friends. We've had a good morning. And you know what? Even if we're not friends, the morning's over and done and I don't have to do that particular one again. Same thing here. If you have a routine and a structure around it and you can stick to that, it makes things a lot easier. I'm not necessarily the most structured, routine-y kind of person, which is a shame because I have 2 children who really benefit from structure and routine. And having a medically complex child, yes, there's an awful lot of structure and routine around her, but things change like that with her. You can have all the routine you want, but if she's not well, the routine's gone. Because structural obligations are to do with structure, they have to happen, and that can perhaps make you feel like you don't have any agency over them. But I hope I've been able to highlight that actually you have way more agency than you think. It's not that you can choose whether or not to do them, but you can, to a certain extent, choose how to do them, and to a very large extent, you can choose how to think about them, how to react about them. You can choose your own mindset. But also, apart from the mindset, I think that coming up with structures and routines that work for you, for the way that your brain functions, for the realities of your life, it does make the structural obligations so much easier to handle. I'm sure you know by now that I use a bullet journal. I love my bullet journal because it's not structured, it's not rigid, it can flow with what I need. Yes, it does require a little bit of time to sit with a ruler and a pen and draw up some lines and get it to work exactly how I need, but that time is worth it for me because it saves me time down the line, because it keeps everything in my life structured and I have things to refer to. I also use Google Calendar. The Google Calendar is very important because my ex and co-parent and I have shared Google Calendars relating to the girls. In my bullet journal, I have an annual overview that I've put over 4 pages. So I have 1 quarter per page. And that means that I can do a sort of big vision thing per quarter. Bills that go out quarterly, bills that go out annually are in there so I can see when they happen. The few birthdays I bother to keep track of in there so I can see when they happen. But like important dates, that kind of stuff. I then have a 1-page monthly vision board. And that I have put into 3 different categories. I have the feminine duality, I have parent XP, and I have my personal life. And I don't complicate it more than that. In order to move the business forward, this is what would be really good if it happens this month. All of that goes into the monthly vision board. All of the monthly bills and the month, what do we call it? The month shift life admin stuff that needs to happen, that goes under personal. If I have appointments or meetings to do with myself or my daughter, that actually goes in the day entry. So I don't bother putting that in the monthly. Then I go into my day-to-day entries. I have half a page per day. I'm actually considering moving it to 1 page per day. I'm not entirely sure because I kind of want to have all the dates for the full month written out ahead of time so that I can write in my work rotas and I can write in my appointments and, you know, the things that are definitely happening. But sometimes half a page is not enough for the day I'm having. And sometimes half a page is not used at all. Maybe half a page is good enough compromise. And then for day to day, I check in with myself. What do I have energy for today? What has to happen? What do I want for myself? And I plan the day from that. And then I have 3 categories for my day-to-day to-do items. I have a category for the energy draining tasks and a category for the energy giving tasks. And then I suppose a blank category, to be perfectly honest, for neutral tasks. I don't use a symbol for it, but I use a symbol for the energy draining and a symbol for the energy giving, because that allows me to see at a glance, have I just given myself too many energy draining things today? I need to balance that out. Or even if it's just the one energy draining thing, is it the one thing that is really gonna knock me for 6? So I definitely need to add in something that is truly energy giving, again, to balance things out, right? And whilst recording a podcast is energy giving, that might not be the energy giving task that I want on a very, very heavy day. The energy giving task I want on a very, very heavy day might be to have a video call with a couple of friends. Some days the energy drainers are just so big that you're gonna have to accept the rest of the day as lost and be really kind to yourself, because there are just so many energy draining tasks that have to happen, or the few energy draining tasks are so big, but again, they have to happen, that you actually don't have a choice. And you're gonna have to accept that the brain fog will be worse today, and my mood will be less pleasant today. My diplomacy skills will be gone today, right? I had such a day, it's a few weeks ago, but I had to travel into London and go to the Swedish embassy and apply for a new passport. This is not stuff I am good at. I had to plan the travel around it. I had to drop my kids off at their dad's, and then I had a fairly small window of time to get home and then get to the train station to get on the right train to get into London to be on time for my appointment. And it's like nothing could go wrong with that travel. And I do not like anything to do with filling in forms. I do not like dealing with authorities. And I mean, this is not a difficult task. The people who work there, they are so very, very pleasant, and the forms are not difficult. But for me, these are energy draining tasks. I struggle with them, okay? I was not a pleasant person to be around that day. And I was not able to rely on my brain at all. My ex and I, we don't just co-parent the children, we also co-parent the cars. My daughter comes with a wheelchair van, so whoever has her has the van, and then the other person has a small commuter car. I only have 1 key for that car, all right? When he has the car, he needs to have the key. When I have the car, I have to have the key. And so I've dropped the kids off with him, I've dropped the wheelchair van off with him, obviously. I've taken the small commuter car and I'm driving home, so I'm in the middle of driving the car. And I suddenly have a full-on panic attack. Did he give me the car key? For this car. The one I am just driving in. I wonder if he gave me the car key for this one. Like, that's how stressed out I was. And that's how badly that affected my executive function. But yes, to bring it back, I'm waffling today, aren't I? I have a lot of good stories today, don't I? Don't worry, more are coming. I feel like this is the story episode. Yes, but non-negotiables and structural obligations, routine and structure will really help you with these things. And then it's mindset shift. Thinking about how you think about them. Choosing how you want to feel about them. And being very, very kind to yourself when you fall apart, because it's just been too much of a day. Our absorbed responsibilities then, you know, the things that we are expected to do, or maybe even the expectation is just coming from ourselves, right? But things that we've picked up along the ways, things that we are capable of doing and sorting out, and they need doing, they need sorting out, and well, because I saw it, I'm now the one doing it. You are falling foul of peer pressure, of social media pressure, most definitely your good girl conditioning. This is just what good women do, right? And they are so hard to drop. Absorbed responsibilities are super hard to drop because they are so deeply entangled with our identity and with our internal sense of safety very often. I mean, you have your emotional regulator person, the one who manages the emotional landscape in the family or the relationship. Always feeling into what is happening around them, how is everybody feeling, she's picking up on every sensation in the room and adjusts to it. I want to caveat this by saying that I am talking about an internal sense of safety. I'm not talking about a woman in an abusive relationship. I am not qualified or experienced to help with that. That's National Domestic Abuse Helpline or Women's Aid. They're very qualified and experienced. I'm talking about learned behaviour because, you know, when we're children, we pick things up. So perhaps our parents were not that good at emotional regulation, so we've learned to take that on from a very, very early age, and we carry that with us. Yeah, it's that kind of thing I'm talking about. I was severely bullied in primary school and less, but still bullied throughout secondary school. I got very, very good at making myself fit in. And I have had to work very, very hard on permitting myself to take up space, to speak my own truth, to be my weird little self and not think that I'm going to be shunned and unsafe because I'm different. Okay, it's that sort of level I'm talking about when it comes to the emotional regulator, when you sense that your partner is in a mood and you make adjustments to make the atmosphere nicer. And in all honesty, if this comes from a place of love and confidence, it is an absolutely beautiful thing to hold space for your partner if they come home from work and they've had a shit day and they're in a really pissy mood. And be there for them if they want to talk or suggest a takeaway or a film or, you know, what can I do? What can I do to lighten things for you? What can I do to make you feel better? If that comes from a place of genuine love, of genuine care, and knowledge that you could not do it, and there wouldn't be any real consequences to your sense of safety, absolutely keep doing it. It is still an absorbed responsibility, but not all absorbed responsibilities are bad. And it's probably an absorbed responsibility you absolutely want to keep because you love this person, you care for them. Yeah? But if it comes from this place of carrying all childhood trauma with you into new relationships and you feel your internal sense of safety is, what's the word? Jeopardized. Where it feels like your internal sense of safety is jeopardized, then it might be an absorbed responsibility you want to look at. If you think that it's your job to keep things calm, you don't ask for anything for yourself, you shrink, then maybe that is an absorbed responsibility you want to take a really good look at. Absolutely support your partner. Absolutely be emotionally available, but care is a choice. If it feels like a responsibility, it's no longer care. We have a social organizer. She plans all the parties, all the gatherings, all the girls' trips. She's good at it. She's really good at it. She has the laminated itinerary. She has everybody's travel plans. She makes sure nobody feels left out. She has a follow-up plan for after the event, making sure that all the photos get shared with everybody. Usually she actually loves doing it because she knows she's good at it. It's just that nobody ever really asked her to be that person, but she now owns it and she's kind of stressed out. There's a lot going on, like work is really stressful and the kids are really stressful and now my parents are older and sicker and I just feel like I have responsibilities coming out of my ears and I don't want to be the one planning the next gathering, but I don't know how to say no. Definitely an absorbed responsibility, right? And you see what I mean now, that these are hard to drop because they're so entangled with our identity. That is an identity that's hard to let go of. Because the truth is, you get praised for your skills in social organizing. Your friends love it and they tell you, and that feels good. You want to feel good. You want the praise, you just don't want the responsibility of the planning, at least not right now, okay? Yes. You have standards for how you want the house to look. And you've probably a lot of times asked your partner and your kids to help you. It's just that he feels the dishwasher wrong and that's not how you clean a floor. And now you are the one who's doing all the cleaning and all the tidying and making sure that the house is up to scratch. And you feel really resentful because you actually really quite want some help. This is a woman I see a lot. I see her quite often. And it always makes me slightly wince when I hear the, not like that, oh, I'll do it. And I'm like, if you want the help, you're going to have to let them help. Even if they do it wrong, you're going to have to let him fill the dishwasher. Oh, but it doesn't get clean. So what? He's going to have to do it again then. It doesn't actually matter. It probably will come out clean, you know. There is more than one way to fill a dishwasher. Okay, I'm going to get hate messages on Instagram. That's going to be a social media post. There's more than one way to fill a dishwasher. Just for the debate value of it. But you have a certain expectation of how it's supposed to look. You have a certain expectation of how it's supposed to be done. And then you're the only one who can meet that expectation. And it's an absorbed responsibility. What about the woman who was shopping in Aldi late one night? She was tired. She'd had a long day at work, come home from work, had to cook dinner and sort the kitchen out afterwards and make sure that the kids did their homework. And whilst they're sitting there doing the homework, one of her teenage kids go, "Oh, Mom, I need these things for my school project tomorrow." And now she's in Aldi and she's buying these things. And today's her birthday. Yeah. This is what she's doing at 9 o'clock in the evening on her birthday, after work. And dinner and homework and tidying. She's in Aldi getting the stuff for her kids' school project tomorrow. Yeah. The woman who loves Christmas. She's got this beautiful Christmas Eve tradition where after the kids have gone to bed, she sits up, she has a glass of wine, and then that's when she's wrapping the presents. And she's just full of this, glorious alone time for starters, but it's just the magic of it all and imagining the look in the kids' eyes, their excitement as they come downstairs in the morning and they see all the presents. And then her ex walks through the door to drop off his presents and to get a little company because he's feeling a bit lonely. So he invites himself in and sits down and then dumps a full bag of unwrapped presents by her feet. Because she was wrapping his presents last Christmas Eve and the Christmas Eve before then, when they were still together. So of course she still wants to do it now, right? And anyone listening to that story, you tell him to go F himself. It's an inconsiderate ex. Honestly, who does he think he is? I'm pretty sure that was one of many benefits that ceased to exist when they split up. Yes? Except that she has absorbed the responsibility of creating the Christmas magic. And so she protects the experience and she compensates for him. Because it's not for her, it's for the kids. Even though she probably wants nothing more than to throw the glass of wine in his face. And if you really think about it, what's the worst that would happen if she didn't try to fix this? There would be a bag of unwrapped presents underneath the Christmas tree. Her ex would look like a bit of an idiot in front of the kids. Maybe the magic isn't perfect, but nobody was actually harmed in the process. This is not neglect, this is not abuse. Would the kids even notice that not all the presents were perfectly wrapped? In all honesty, they might not. They might not care. She cares. That's the point about it, she cares. And that's why she takes it on. And she's not just taken on responsibility for her part of it, she's taken on the responsibility for his too. What about our mum in Aldi? What would happen if she said no? Honestly, it is a true story. I'm the one she told this to. And just that one sentence at the end, "And today's my birthday," it broke my heart. And it made me come out in feminism as though it's hives. It's very itchy. I have an itchy spot here asking why the husband didn't make her birthday dinner. And I have another itchy spot here wondering why the teenager is not doing their own damn shopping if they couldn't remember their school project a few days ago, right? It's her birthday. It is not her job to cook dinner today. It is not her job to run to Aldi at 9 p.m. just because somebody else's lack of planning is supposedly her sense of urgency, right? It's just, yeah. It makes me so angry, that story. And it is a true story. But I think it's a reasonable thing to ask, why didn't her husband sort out her birthday dinner? And why is the teenager not doing their own shopping? They're a teenager, they should probably be able to do some shopping by now. Ultimately, what is the worst that could happen if this woman said, I'm not going to the supermarket at this time of night and shopping for you? The worst that could happen is that her kid turns up at school and doesn't have the things for their project. That is the worst that can happen. But she's probably not thinking that it'll make her kid look bad. She's thinking it will make her look bad. Because what horrible mother doesn't make sure that her child has everything they need for the school day? Okay? That feeds into a deeper, more primal fear, you know, from very, very, very early humanity of, I'll be thrown out of the tribe. I'll be shunned by the tribe if I am not showing up as the perfect mom. That's what it comes down to. You lose your acceptance. That's not actually what happens. It really isn't what happens. But that is the fear that it feeds into. And that fear sits really deep inside us because as humans, belonging to a group equals survival. We're going deep into the ancestral soul here. The worst thing that can happen is that the child fails that assignment. That's it. And again, that's not neglect. It's not harmful. And if you no longer want to be the person in sole control and responsibility of cleaning the house, what's the worst that can happen? The house might not be quite as clean. And that's not even the worst thing that can happen. The worst thing that can happen is that you find out that your way was not the only way to do it. That their way could be just as good, or maybe even better. That is the worst thing that can happen if you allow your family members responsibility for cleaning. Our emotional peacekeeper, she risks discomfort, but that discomfort is probably more internal. Maybe an argument. And not an argument as in she's in the wrong, just an argument because she's decided not to soften the edges and her partner is already on edge and that leads to bickering and that leads to an argument. But that is what you risk. If you decide not to soften and manage an emotionally tense environment, that is the worst that can happen. Again, not in an abusive relationship. Our social organizer, she risks that one of her other friends is a better party planner than she is. And none of these risks are ultimately harmful. And we are highly unlikely to be shunned by the tribe and kicked out to survive in the wilderness of our own. Highly unlikely. Okay? Yes, absorbed responsibilities, they are hard to drop. They are so entangled in our identity, and there are likely going to be consequences of dropping them. And some you don't even want to drop. You want to hold on to them for whatever reason, and don't drop those. I had a lot of absorbed responsibilities in my marriage. Obviously, getting divorced meant that I dropped quite a lot of them. But there are some that I'm still keeping. One such absorbed responsibility is I do almost all of the communications with our daughter's care team. One could absolutely argue that as he is the stay-at-home parent and he is the main parent carer, he should take over that responsibility. That for me as the working parent, I don't have the time or energy to keep doing it. But I am making a very conscious choice of keeping that responsibility. Because the consequences of dropping it is that it either doesn't happen as often and timely as I would like, or that in order to make it happen as often and as timely as I would like, I'm gonna have to be nagging him a lot, and that's not a responsibility I'm willing to take on. And the other consequence is, if I don't do it, I don't get first-hand information. And I want the first-hand information. I'm holding on to that absorbed responsibility. Absolutely. Willingly. Happily. But things like tidying and organising was a constant source of friction in our marriage. And dropping those responsibilities came with consequences. One of the consequences is I am now divorced, right? My identity as a wife, as a married woman is gone. I'm perfectly okay with that consequence, by the way. But another consequence was that I had to face up to my own hypocrisy. Because it turns out that the box of cables wasn't just him. I too had, because I've tidied it up and binned a lot, but I too had a giant box of obsolete cables. Damn it! That wasn't all him! I had to face up to the consequence that I too am not the tidiest person in the world. And apparently I don't have invisible domestic support staff that just cleans around and behind me. But the mess wasn't all him. So one consequence was having to accept that, yeah, I'm not perfect. Who'da thunk? I'm not sitting here telling you that you should drop all of your absorbed responsibilities. But I am saying that absorbed responsibilities is a very good place to look if you are living in functional burnout, and areas to go, you know what, I'm not going to do this one. I'm going to drop this one, as long as you are prepared to take the consequences. In all honesty, there aren't always consequences, and there aren't always bad consequences. It might actually be that you dropping those responsibilities, nothing happens. Absolutely nothing happens. Nobody noticed. You were doing all these things and nobody noticed anyway. And just as with your non-negotiables and your structural obligations, you can also make changes around how you meet these responsibilities. You can structure a lot of them to make life that little bit easier and a little bit freer. I'm very curious to find out, what have you taken away from today's episode? If you were listening or watching this on Spotify or YouTube, there is a comment field and please engage in it. If you are listening to this on Apple and you found it useful, then please leave me a 5-star review and maybe share with a friend who needs to hear it. It helps more than you know. And thank you so much. I'll speak to you again soon.
From ashes, dust, and crooked lines, I forged a fire.